Midsommar is written and directed by Ari Aster in his second feature film. His feature film debut, however, was Hereditary, a movie that really divided a lot of opinions. I mean, from the performance by Toni Collette to the visuals to the style to the writing to the scares and all that stuff, it was a split almost right down the middle. It was a love it or hate it thing with critics. You either loved it or you fucking hated it. I mean, there was really no, really not a lot of people that either were good, bad, or indifferent. It was like just that split right down the middle. I am in the love it category. I thought Toni Collette was amazing. I thought the visual, it was just dripping with visual presence and great scares, and just the camera work was amazing. The writing was really good. The music was really good. Hereditary, had it not been for another movie that I'll touch on here just in a little bit, Hereditary would have been my favorite horror movie of last year. Now, it was damn close, but Toni Collette's performance was absolutely great. And seeing that Ari Aster managed to do that with his first feature film, I thought, okay, what the fuck's he going to do for Midsommar? Midsommar looked pretty freaky as fuck. It tells the story of a couple that has grown distant. You had Florence Pugh. She plays the character of Danny, and Florence was in Fighting With My Family. Yes, she was Paige. Yes, Paige, believe it or not. And then you have Jack Reynor, who plays Christian, and their boyfriend and girlfriend, but things are distant, but things are keeping them together. And there are certain issues that are going on with both of them. It could be a relationship of just, convenience, or there's some love there, but everybody's grown apart. And that does tend to happen with some couples, but sometimes people stay together maybe just because they don't want to abandon the other or they feel some kind of guilt, commitment, whatever. And relationships, and fractured relationships are touched on a lot in this movie. There's also a group of friends that Christian has of various backgrounds. And they're like, you've been wanting out of this stupid relationship for a while and everything. We're planning on going to this retreat in Sweden and everything, and all this stuff's touched on in the trailer. So if you haven't seen the trailer, I do apologize. I'll get into spoilers a little bit later. But with this, everybody goes to Sweden. The characters of Danny and Christian, they're trying to either repair the relationship, or hey, Danny's like, well, I wish you would have told me about the trip, but I want to go. They go. And of course, it seems like, this great, backpacking trip in Sweden. It's in this weird, mountainous hometown, almost pagan, Mennonite type community and everything. And it's clearly, obviously, a cult, and shit really starts to go south. And I will say, though, if you did not like how Hereditary was a slow burning movie, you are not going to like Midsommar. Because Midsommar was an even slower burn. Now, it was a good kind of slow burn, and the stuff that they set up and everything, from the very beginning with the great opening, and the visuals are really what grabbed me right away. If you take nothing more away from this movie, the visuals in Midsommar are absolutely just captivating, and just your eyeballs just drink them in. It almost assaults you with just how beautiful it is. And I don't mean just the scenery. The scenery is absolutely beautiful. Wherever they filmed this, absolutely amazing. The cast was great. It was a lot of Swedish people in the cast, obviously. There were some Americans, or in the case of Florence, she's a Brit playing an American. But everybody played their roles pretty well here. I mean, there were a lot of stock characters, and obviously it seems like as outsiders, maybe they shouldn't be there, even though this group, this hometown, this this like pagan, pagan community that one of the friends has such a deep connection with, and everything seems to be going swimmingly. He's like, no, it's fine, or whatever. Hey, we're friends. I'm bringing you here to meet my family, meet my friends and everything, but don't worry about them having creepy traditions and everything, and being all weird, and being so accepting and everything. And don't worry about all the drugs that we take. I mean, don't worry about that. That's just totally fine. What the fuck else you gonna do when you're in the rural hills in Sweden? Take some fucking drugs. That's what you're gonna do. With this, it is a slow burn. It does remind me a lot of actually what was my favorite movie of last year, Suspiria. And Suspiria, it was either Suspiria or A Simple Favor, which shows a lot about my different tastes. Can you tell I'm a horror movie fan? If you've actually watched this channel for any length of time, you figured out that I'm a horror movie fan. Suspiria was much more vicious and, visceral and everything. There were some visceral parts of this movie. That one was much more horror and much more like, gore and that kind of stuff. While there were some cool gore effects here, and some cool psychological stuff. It was really about this couple and the friends that were there and the fractured relationships and how easily people could turn on each other that really were what was the whole reason behind this, and the stuff that Danny had suffered early on in her life, or even early on in the movie, that played into her, fractured mental state. Seemingly, I mean, anybody, and I'll get into spoilers here a little bit later, but the stuff she went through to set up for this, naturally she would be on edge, would just want a boyfriend that loves her and gets a sense that, because anybody can sense that, whether you're a girlfriend and dating a girl, girl dating a boy, boy dating a boy, boy dating a girl, doesn't matter. And if you have issues with that, sorry, I support the LGBTQ community, so you may not want to hear any more of that, but too bad. I'm going to promote and support my friends. So I digress. This movie deals with the stress and strife among relationships. And what I liked about it, again, the visual treats, the visuals were just so amazing, so great, just so rich and detailed. And the scares, when they came, happened well. I will say that this was much more psychological, much more of a psychological drama horror than it was a straight up horror. Hereditary was much more supernatural and spoopy and everything. This had some spooky imagery to it, but it was much more about this couple and about the relationship that they have that's not actually going that well, and how being around this new community and this, pure community, so to speak, this maybe got some weird rituals, could affect them and everything, and it brings out a lot of stuff that they've been hiding from each other for a while. So, yeah, with the movie, it is a little bit odd. Not everybody's going to like it. I could already tell. I mean, I was there with one of my best friends. There were only maybe 10 other people in the theater, and I'm pretty certain you could have asked everybody there and you would have gotten a different opinion. The movie, again, is a slow burn and is by no means perfect. The one complaint I do have about the movie is the music. While good, the music is very, very good. They have too many times where they boom, they boom it up way, way too loud. Not for a jump scare, they just boom it up way too loud. And I thought maybe it was just me that was hearing that. No, my best friend did and everybody else did. I don't know if it was the theater. I don't know if that's how the movie was done. That was my only issue. The loud music, while cool at times, did get a little bit overdone. So that was probably my one major complaint about the movie. The music was beautiful, though, and the movie itself was very, very beautiful. So I'm going to get into spoilers here. I'm about 8 minutes in. I'm not going to go too long into spoilers. But do go see this movie. However, I will understand if you guys do not like it. But I did enjoy this. So anyway, your spoilers are happening right now. So yeah, if you're still watching, sorry. So in the beginning, we open up with this cool, picturesque scene of this woman singing in Swedish or whatever. Or I assume Swedish because it mainly takes place in Sweden, even though we have a bit of a U.S. location at first. But Danny and Christian, it's very much centered around their relationship. Danny is seeing these dark messages from her sister. One in particular says, and her sister suffers from some kind of bipolar disorder. It said, everything's black. Mom and dad are coming too. And Danny's like, what does that mean? What does that mean? She's trying to get in contact with her sister. Her, Christian ends up just, her boyfriend ends up saying, oh, she's done this before. And it turns out that Danny gets a call. Her parents are dead and her sister are dead. It turns out that the sister had killed the parents and then run this, pipe. He turned both cars on, put the exhaust together, and then put the thing over her mouth, the hose over her mouth, and choked on all the smoke. So Danny naturally is fractured. All this time, Christian is talking to his friend. His friends are saying, you've been wanting out of this relationship for a while. She clearly has these issues. You need to get rid of her. She's also taking this medication that I had to Google it while the movie was going on during the slow part, and I think it had to do with epilepsy, so seizures. That isn't necessarily touched on a ton in the movie. I mean, even though I think it was kind of alluded to, maybe it was just something that was dropped. But with that, okay, she clearly has some mental issues. Obviously, Christian is thinking about breaking up with her. This thing happens with the parents and the sister. He does not do that. He stays with her because he does care about her. Even if he doesn't love her, he does care about her. Then it turns out they end up going on this trip. There is one friend of Christian's that is, the Swedish guy. And hey, he's like, he forms a bit of an attachment with Danny. I think it's pretty obvious where this is going. Even though nothing sexual happens, at least with those two. We get we get them all going to Sweden. We get some really cool overhead camera shots. And then we get, this one point where they're driving to this festival thing, and the road, and the camera just turns upside down. So the road is like this, road's on top of the screen or whatever. And I just couldn't help but say to myself, so, wow, they really do drive on the wrong side of the road there. And actually, I don't know if they do, but honestly, I just couldn't help but make the joke. Again, visual treat and everything. they get to this pagan area that one of Christian's friends, obviously, he knows everybody. He knows everybody. Everybody's good. They take some drugs and are tripping out and everything. And there's the summers in Sweden. Apparently, I guess in some parts the sun rarely sets, if ever sets, and probably would drive some people insane. People trip out on some drugs some more. They get to this area where everything seems really, really good. Danny feels very accepted, yet obviously understands that people are weird here because it's a new culture. It's a culture shock. And then shit really does start to go south. You have some people that, you have these, weird traditions that end up happening. And you end up hearing about like the ages and how people advance through life. And from 54 to 72, they become, elders or this kind of stuff. And what happens after 72? Well, it turns out they write you off. You kill yourself, basically. They show this tradition of people dropping from a cliff. This couple. And the woman lands and hits face first and everything on the stone. Really cool visual image. This happens way later in the movie, though. This is like an hour in at least. And then the husband, I assume the husband, drops and, but he ends up shattering his legs and is still alive, and they have to hammer him with a giant mallet hammer. And I just kept thinking that it was like Mario and like the Mario movies. So it was kind of funny. That part was kind of funny. Even though it was, visually and viscerally, impressive. Also, there's two other students. They're kids kind of disposable. They're students from London that were also brought over, aka, also known as the first two people that are going to die. With, you get little hints and everything. Like you hear, oh, what are these kids doing? Oh, they're playing Skin the Fool. Well, it's not like that name's going to go back and, oh, kids are playing something called Skin the Fool. That name's not going to come back and bite us in the ass. But all through the movie, you get this just sense of dread and everything. And obviously things aren't going well. Like the first thing, if I first saw that, I'd be like, as welcoming as these people are, it's very obviously a cult. They're obviously going to sacrifice people. I do not want to be here. Grand horror movie, people making stupid decisions in horror movies is, horror movie 101. So that's what's going to happen. The music, once again, that's really my only complaint about this movie, is there were too many times where it's like, it would just be booming in your ears, and for seemingly no reason. Now, it wasn't like so much mistimed. I just thought they drug it on a little bit too long. And they did stretch out some shots. There were some very cool, some very cool shit in the background as things were going on. Like, people talking in the foreground, shit going on in the background. And this whole community, they're functioning and everything, but they're very obvious. There's obviously the sinister undertones. How are they able to, How are they able to keep their numbers up and everything if nobody is let in? Well, obviously inbreeding kind of gets brought up, but that's why they bring in some outsiders so they can have some fresh blood, and that kind of comes into play a little bit later. It turns out that they basically are using these people, they're using Danny and Christian and that kind of stuff, and the friends get offed as things go on. Danny finds out that Christian basically ends up doing the nasty with some woman that, he ends up getting drugged into. I mean, literally, he ends up getting drugged and ends up fornicating with her. Basically ends up fucking her while a bunch of naked women are around. It's really, really bizarre. Again, if you're watching at this point and watching for spoilers, sorry. I can't spoil everything in the movie, but there are some things I'm going to spoil. The movie is quite impressive with how it looks. There are some sequences that were a little too drawn out, though. I think they could have probably cut this down by about 15 minutes, and then it would have been just under the running time of Hereditary. It's not quite as long as Suspiria. I think Suspiria was about 10 minutes longer, but it turns out that Danny does end up belonging there. She feels that, she's accepting and everything. It's also very much Wicker Man, 1970s like. They even have a bear that's in a cage at one point that comes back to play a little bit later with a guy in a bear suit, not Nicolas Cage. I mean, I'm talking the good Wicker Man, by the way. Don't worry, we got no not the bees thing, even though it gets implied that there's a lot of ticks and a lot of bugs around in Sweden. But don't worry, we don't get any bee swarms or stuff over the head. We don't get anything like that. What we do get, however, is quite an experience. Now, it's an experience not everybody's going to love. And I will totally understand if there are people that do not like it. But I did like it. The movie ends with Danny basically being, enjoying herself and realizing that she does belong there for whatever reason. It's just she feels like she belongs after losing her family, losing her parents, losing her sister, and her boyfriend basically, fucking another girl, but also not wanting to be with her. That was the final straw that broke the back. And everything ends with basically Danny ending up, being the pseudo leader queen of this cult. And that was kind of cool. The visuals are very impressive. Once again, I could go over about the visuals for an hour. This movie is an absolute treat. Music being too loud was a little bit of an issue. But everything else, love the performances. Florence certainly is somebody that is on the rise as an actress. Everybody else in the movie did very, very well. There were some stock characters. Not everything was perfect in it, but I really did enjoy it. So I'm going to say A minus. A minus. I mean, I probably put a poll up there already, but A minus. Even though I can see the flaws in it, I loved a lot more than I hated. Really, besides music, I can't think of a lot that I didn't like. But anyway, A minus. So that's what I gotta say. Agree, disagree with what I said. What did you think of Midsommar? Let me know in the comments. By the way, I'm not saying this movie is wholly original, but it's the way it was handled and the craft and the care. I just really appreciate it. But anyway, agree, disagree with what I said. Like, share, subscribe. Twitter handle in the description. I'm John Ritlin. I will see you soon.